Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us today for this live stream event. My name is Alexia, and I am the Project and Event Manager of the Microsoft Reactor Toronto. I will be sharing session resources with you in the chat. But before we begin, I'd like to quickly review two items with you, our Code of Conduct and Event Guidelines. First, please take a moment to review our Code of Conduct. Microsoft Reactor seeks to provide a respectful environment for our audience and presenters. We encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. And secondly, our event guidelines. This session is being recorded and will be available on demand through the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel in about 24 to 48 hours. I will be sharing the link in the chat for our channel. And if you've not been on a live stream through YouTube before, please note that you must create an account on YouTube in order to interact and access the chat. You can set that up now. And if you're unable to use the chat but have questions, feel free to reach out to us through social media or on Meetup. Which brings us to today's session. We are live from the Reactor Toronto today. Who do we have here? Do we have Allan? Hi there.
Am I live?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear myself in the background. That's interesting. Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's the first time I've been out to do one of these events, at least live, in 3 years. Yay, post-pandemic life. So today we are going to be talking about an introduction. This is a full workshop, so we are going to be doing code. So my name is Allan Richie. I have been doing software development for about just over 20 years now. So I've been at this a while. I've been around since the days of CGI Bin and Perl. What great times those were, back when the browsers were very naive. I've done everything from ASP.NET Web Forms to classic ASP, PHP, all the stuff to do with .NET. And specifically in the last few years, I've been doing, obviously as a .NET developer, a lot of Azure and some IoT stuff. But one of my big things that's very close to my heart is the Xamarin, which is now evolved into .NET MAUI. So that's what we're going to be talking about, obviously, quite a bit today. Just some things about questions. So if you guys have questions that are here or anybody online, just bring them up right away. I do ask that we keep it relevant to the topic at hand, or if it's something that we're going to cover later in this talk, then I'll just let you know, and then we'll get to it when we get to it. Another thing is, let's refrain from any roadmap kind of discussions. I mean, we do have a special guest here today that can answer a lot of that, but we're not going to put the poor guy on the spot too much. So with that, I'm going to introduce Jonathan Dick. He is the literal voice of .NET MAUI. So he is the, what's your big acronymed title? I'm not even going to bother to say it because it's like too many syllables for me.
Yeah, so I'm here with Allan today. Nice to get an invite up to Toronto. I'm kind of down in southern Ontario, so not too far away, but a little bit of a hike up. And as Allan said, I'm the engineering lead, team lead for the .NET MAUI project, formerly Xamarin Forms, and a bunch of other small pieces within that too. So excited to kind of be around, help out, answer some questions if we can, maybe take a little bit of a load off of Allan here for a bit. So
he only has to, he's going to do one set of slides and some code later for something called shell navigation. That's a few slides in. So we got about 2.5 hours to do this. I'll lead in with the shell stuff after, because I call the shell navigation, it's the easy way to do it, but there's a better way to do it. But we won't cover that today. But that'll be your section of things.
Sounds good.
In the meantime, you can throw stuff and shade.
Sounds like you got a lot of work to cover, so you better get moving.
So we do have about 7 slides or 7 PowerPoints to get through and some demo code. There's no way we're going to get through all that because they already slowed me down about half an hour here. So the first thing I want to do is tell you what we're going to be covering. So during the workshop, we're going to build our first app, which means we're going to go through Visual Studio. For everybody online, if you can start installing Visual Studio, I am going to have John show how to do it through Windows. Looks like everybody here is on a Windows machine. So we'll install Visual Studio, we'll get all the tooling installed, and then we'll start building an app. I'm going to go through how we build an initial app. So obviously there's screens and stuff, but we do something called MVVM, or model view model, and the data binding that goes behind that. So it's a good general architecture to have. And we're going to talk, obviously, like I said, about navigation. That will be John's area. And I'll also explain how we do the cross-platform stuff. So I know you had mentioned there's some Android, a little bit of other native stuff in the audience. So we'll show how to kind of access both with whether you need an Android API or an iOS API. We'll kind of show some of that stuff. And last but not least, this kind of goes with data binding, but we'll be displaying the data. So it'll be a pretty easy app to do. So that's what we're going to try and get through in these 2.5 hours. Oh, we do have app themes, but I don't think we're going to get there. So I'm going to cover that. John, do you want to swap over? I'm hoping that there's somebody there that'll swap to your machine.
Yes. Give that a try.
You can just kick mine out of the way if you need to. You're on the Stream Deck, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
All right. Let's see what's all in this set of adapters.
And for anybody that's online right now viewing the PowerPoint, if you want to get the code, there is some stuff in my. Oh, you just kicked me off.
Yep. Well, I need your.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll get back to there in a second.
Or will
Still
it
the
show
HDMI.
if I go through? All right. There's that one.
All right. I'll get out of the way. Turn off my mic.
Let's go to USB-C. While I'm trying to do that, I do have a page set up. And you'll see in a minute here when I get there. Is that coming up? And then I need to also share this through Stream Deck, correct? Or StreamYard. Share screen. Don't think. Let's hide the picture of us first. Alrighty. All right. So what you will want to do is head on over to, you can type in the address visualstudio.microsoft.com. You can search it and you'll find it just as easily. There is a big download button here. You probably are going to want the community edition. So Visual Studio 2022 community, if you click on that, that'll bring you to the download page. It should automatically start it like the few times I tested it here before. And then once that's downloaded, you open up the installer and you will be greeted eventually with this page. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. I'm not going to talk through all of it because the main thing that we're interested in today, of course, is .NET MAUI. So if you scroll down through the workloads here, there's a whole bunch of, there's ASP.NET, Azure, Node.js. And as we get scrolling through, we want .NET Multi-Platform App UI Development, which if you connect the dots, MAUI is an acronym for Multi-Platform App UI Development. That will give you all of these things on the side here. There is an option to check Xamarin if you were trying to build with some of the old Xamarin project types. We don't need that to do MAUI, and that keeps our install a little bit lighter. And then you just go ahead and hit the install button when you're ready. Once that's done, you should have a working installation of Visual. I think you can even launch it from the installer if you'd like to. I think we'll see some of that in code. Do we need to launch it now? Is that helpful?
No, I can do that when we're doing the demo.
All right.
I am going to be doing it in Visual Studio from Mac.
Yeah, well, let's just do a quick. If you would go into it after it's installed and it would launch, I've got a few instances here, but this will look similar anyway. If you are following along at home, you could go ahead and create a new project down here, which Allan will show you on VS Mac, very similar. This will bring up a bunch of different templates. I have one that's recently used. You probably won't see that on your side because you haven't used it yet. So if you go ahead and search for MAUI, a few different options will pop up. And generally for today, I think we're interested in the .NET MAUI app So that would be the one to pick and kind of go through next and next. And I think you can stick with all the defaults throughout this. You will see not Net 6 or 7.0 if you're running the stable version, which I would recommend right now. It should kind of default to Net 6.0. That's fine for now. Use that, create your project, and then you'll be graded with the ID and a brand new project open. Just takes a second. Yeah, that's it. All right.
Okay. Now, probably people at home, I guess you guys have already installed it, hopefully. Okay, so we don't have to worry too much about time. Oh. Okay, let's get these wires fixed up.
You got that?
Yep.
Beautiful.
Hopefully it didn't kick me off the stream. Did it kick me off the stream? Need to have multiple presentation ports on here. Just give us 1 second and we'll get this back on.
No, you will need to share again.
Okay. Give me 1 second. So bring that up. I'm gonna mute this tab. Tab's already muted. Cancel, enter studio. All right.
And you need to share the screen.
Yep. There we go. And share, hide, minimize. There we go. Okay, so I'm just gonna put this back to this. And we'll go to slide 3, slide 4. Okay, so for everybody at home, and you guys here, if you want to actually pull the workshop off of GitHub, it is the top link. Anything that's different from today will be in the bottom link for later, so you can grab this all online. I'll make sure that they have the links. So I'll give you guys a second to grab that. So let's talk about a little bit of what Maui is. So Maui in the .NET world is kind of the unification of all of the UI platforms. So you've got Android, iOS, and some Windows stuff in there. But .NET as a whole is a very unified platform. You can reach with .NET 6 pretty much everything we see up there, from cloud to web, obviously mobile, desktop. There is gaming through Unity. There's a lot of IoT stuff for the Azure developers that have done stuff. And obviously AI is a big one right now. In terms of the ecosystem, you know, .NET's everywhere. Our package manager of choice is called NuGet. We also have, obviously, GitHub being owned by Microsoft. There's, you know, all the .NET stuff, or at least ASP.NET is very open source. There's several IDEs out there. If you're on a Mac, you've got Visual Studio for Mac, obviously Visual Studio for Windows, and kind of the up-and-comer or the very popular one is Visual Studio Code. We also have a good CLI experience now since kind of .NET Core. Pretty much everything we do now is you know, following with the CLI in the back end. So anybody with VS for Mac, I am going to be doing all of the dev code today in VS for Mac, but you'll be able to follow along in Windows without too much trouble. This is where we got into James's wild slides. So I'm not sure why there's nothing coming up for his slides. So let's see. There we go. So the idea with kind of some of this platform, or why you want some of the cross-platform, is obviously when you're building for specific platforms, you're going to need a whole bunch of developers. So if you're on Mac OS or if you're on iOS, you need Objective-C or Swift. For the Android developers, you guys are using Kotlin or Java. Windows has got .NET, C++, JS. I think they have a TypeScript option now. I'm not sure about that. So you've got all these options, but you're really writing for one platform. So hopefully the next slide. Okay, so this is what Maui's covering. It's animated here. So with .NET MAUI, we're trying to hit as many platforms or as many UI platforms as we can with one set of code. We can, I don't know what the latest statistics are, but it used to be a very high percentage. So we could hit Mac OS, we could hit iOS, we could hit Android, iPad, and the UI framework is very aware of the platform that you're on and all the idioms that come with it. So if you're on a desktop or if you're on an iPad or if you're on a mobile phone, you're able to check all of that stuff in the actual source code. And this was the unification slide we wanted. There we go. So the idea with kind of the cross-platform idea is that you're just writing .NET code. So you're writing for all of those platforms with one code base. And like I said, you get most of the way there. There is still times, and like we'll get to later in the presentation, there are still times where you're going to end up still writing some platform-specific stuff. But the good thing is it's all still C#, and you can still access all your good NuGet packages and libraries that you may have. So enter .NET MAUI. So for anybody that's ever done Xamarin, Xamarin Forms was kind of the classic platform, very XAML based. It was a good platform. It's been around for several years. So .NET MAUI is the evolution of Xamarin Forms. It's really kind of a rethink of all of the lessons learned from Xamarin Forms. And they've really done a good job of kind of making it easier to fix problems ourselves or get up to date with new controls without too much issue. So it's definitely a good evolution forward. And for those that have done kind of .NET Core or ASP.NET, it really kind of, the way they've done certain things like dependency injection, for those that are aware of it, it's all kind of built in out of the box. So it's very comfortable for a lot of web developers from the .NET sector to get involved. So this is kind of the marketing statement. This is a good one. I actually haven't read this. So .NET MAUI is an open source app platform from Microsoft for building modern, performant, and multi-platform iOS, Android, Mac OS, and Windows apps with C# and .NET from a single shared code base. Wow, that's a mouthful to say. Must have talked to James about slowing that down for me. And here's the evolution again and how we're looking at it. So we've got one shared code base for our UI, our resources. So that'll be like your image assets, your fonts, and your business logic. And we've got all access to platform features. So say we're using, say, Bluetooth, which is near and dear to my heart. The idea here is that you're writing the Bluetooth code once, and you're hitting all of these platforms along the way with almost no difference in your code. So the idea here is that we want to have a very productive environment. We're not spending a lot of time churning on, code we don't know. We want to maximize the code reuse so that we're, spending more time on our business and less time on the technology. And we're focusing on native performance and integration. So the Maui team has really done a good job. Actually, I guess the .NET team in general has done a good job at making sure that that the code runs very, very fast, as close to native performance as possible. So they've done a whole bunch of tests, and there's a whole bunch of stuff on GitHub that you can find that shows how much work they've done to really make these apps zip. And last but not least, it's a very expansive ecosystem. There is a ton of open source. I myself am pretty involved in that open source community around Xamarin and Maui. There's a lot of other big names out there. So if you've ever done any WPF, there's a Mvvm framework I recommend, which is called Prism. So if you're doing any big apps, you can start to look at the ecosystem. A lot of the big control vendors like Telerik and Syncfusion, yeah, they're all out there with their own control base. So there's a lot of ecosystem support right now, and there'll be even more probably within the next 6 months with .NET 7. Visual Studio 2022. I'm going to skip that stuff. You should all know what it is. For those that have used Visual Studio for Mac, I'm not going to lie, it's got a bit of a bad reputation. I would be the first one to kind of knock at it. But I have to admit, with 2022, this is now a very usable IDE. So if you've been a Mac user in the past and you've been kind of burned by it, I would try and convince you it's worth taking a look at now. I do have one of the MacBooks here, the M2. Actually, it's John's fault that I bought this. And I have to admit, this thing is just revolutionary. If you don't want to buy into the Apple hype, I'm telling you, this thing is real. It is extremely fast. The battery goes, I don't know, I've had it going 14, 15 hours without a charge. It's just crazy. So if you don't want to believe the Apple advertisements that it really is the thing, it really is. This thing is amazing. And if, like I said, you've got Visual Studio for Mac now, which is a good product. It is worth trying again if you didn't like it in the past. So cross-platform UI, where are we going from here? So the idea here is that we want to write one control. And so if I put like an activity indicator, I want to have it look native, but I only want to write the control once. So the idea here is that we've got one consistent UI. So if I type an activity indicator, I want it to look like, well, I've seen this one a lot. I didn't know the Android one keeps changing on me, so I never know what it looks like anymore. So it's going to look like the native platform, because a lot of developers kind of in React Native, more in the Xamarin stuff, traditionally we've wanted our apps to look native. So if I'm on Android, I expect to see the Android spinner. I expect to see the Android tabs. If I'm on iOS, I expect to see the beautiful tab bar. I am an iOS fan. Boot Android. But I want it to look native. I want it to look like it was written for Android. Sorry, I know you guys are Android developers. I don't know how you're not as gray as I am. So again, the idea here is that we have a progress bar, we have a UI indicator, but in Maui, it's just an activity indicator. We turn it on, we turn it off, but it looks like the native platform. Same for something like iOS and the UI slider. So if we've got a UI slider, a seek bar, these ones look exactly the same, to be honest. This one's got a nicer shade. See, the iOS one even looks nicer. It does look nicer, doesn't it? And on .NET MAUI, it's just a slider, right? So it doesn't matter what platform we're on, it's going to look like its native version. But of course, the iOS one looks better. When it comes to controls in Maui, there is a lot coming out of the box. I don't know how, we're probably not going to even cover a very small fraction of them, but out of the box, pretty much everything you're going to need, with the exception of maps, pretty much everything out of the box is there today. And Maps is, when is .NET 7 being released?
I believe it'll be November again, like every year that it is. So, yeah, Maps is in Maui in .NET 7.
Okay, so Maps is about 2 months shy of being released, so that's a good thing. And then they pretty much have a good starting control base. And like I said, if there's something missing, like I don't see like an autocomplete, because I've never seen an autocomplete work the same in two platforms. There is, again, those control vendors out there like Telerik and Sync Fusion that may have that may complete that package for you. In terms of kind of the navigation engine, so you need, obviously, besides controls, you need your set of pages. So content just being the blank slate to write on, flyout being kind of your, what was the term before? I don't remember. Master detail, or what is it in Android again? I don't remember. I'm losing my memory here. But it's the idea that the menu slides out, you click on something, and then it navs. General navigation page, that's where your navigation's at the top. The navigation bar's at the top. And then you have your back buttons and any toolbar items up there, as well as the title. And last but not least, the tabbed page. This, again, will take kind of a native look on the platform. If you're using Android or iOS, they look slightly different, but again, dev'd the same way. In terms of layouts, there's a whole bunch of stuff coming out of the box. In fact, I can't even think anymore of what might be missing in terms of layouts in .NET MAUI or Xamarin Forms. So they pretty much got everything covered in terms of what I can think, but I'm not a UI designer. I'm sure a UI designer could find something to break this on me. But between relative, absolute layout, stack layout, and your general kind of flex and grids, you're pretty much covered in terms of layouts. I mean, anybody that's UI knowledgeable, feel free to correct me, but So just a look at the standard kind of default page that's come out. So if you created your project already for .NET MAUI, this is probably what you're going to see. This is the first entry point. So this is what XAML looks like. This is our general markup. Now, some people don't like markup. I know there's a lot of MVU love in the world and React lovers that it's kind of like a mix. We'll talk about something else where there's like a Blazor/Razor interop with this. But you can do this in C#. It's not hard to do. I think there's a lot of tooling that might be missing there, but it's coming. So like a hot reload. So again, if you're Android guys, you're obviously used to hot reload. So if you're typing in some markup, it reloads the page right in front of you. Maui will do that, but just for your markup right now, C# hot reload for that.
C# hot reload is available. It's something that keeps being iterated on in terms of like what kind of reloads and changes it supports, and so that's definitely one of the the major themes going on through I think .NET 7 and more into .NET 8 as well. So you'll start to see more and more capabilities light up there. But in terms of, I think it's kind of scoped right now to like changing method bodies. Yep. So if you write a method in your view model that basically does like all of your logic for building your UI, that part can probably be reloaded today.
Okay. Oh, I didn't even know that. See, I thought it was only markup, but. So there's lots of options in terms of hot reload. It's improving every day. This really only works, at least in my experience, right on the Windows side right now. Because anybody for doing VS for Mac, it's still preview. So be patient, it's coming. But in Windows, you should have hot reload already. And platform API access. So platform API access, there is going to be cases where, .NET MAUI, because it's your UI framework, isn't going to reach into the OS. So if you've got something like Bluetooth or push notifications, that's a popular one. Any of those things, that's when you're going to have to reach down into the API code. So for Android, you have to go down into whatever 10 versions of Android X they have now for notifications. Let's be honest, that changes all the time, right? And iOS, their APIs tend to change over time, but there's nothing to stop you in C# from going down, especially in .NET MAUI, using that raw native API, but only compiling it in your iOS base. So we're going to show more of that after. So some examples of that is from the iOS perspective, you've got MapKit, though with maps coming in .NET 7, you obviously won't need to, I haven't checked the feature set on maps yet, but you hopefully won't need to reach too far down into it. UI kit, if there is specific controls that Maui doesn't cover, there are some very specific iOS type controls that they don't cover because it's very specific to iOS, but you can go and code them up. I can't even think of the one. Segmented view. That's not an Android thing. So you'd have to code your own segmented view in Android if you wanted it, but it's already there. So you could code one side of the equation and not the other. Siri kit, obviously that's not really UI specific at all. In fact, it's not even really directly in your app. ARKit and CoreML, again, two technologies that are very much outside the mobile app. So there are cases you can get at that code, but it's not specific to .NET MAUI. Just .NET 6 enables you to get down into that code. Now, James had this for Android. So Android, some of those APIs, geolocation, that's a huge one. I think everybody uses that. But below, we can see all of our C# code. So the standard libraries, if you've done .NET development, like system data, I don't know what system Windows is doing up there, but Link, IO, Net, that's all available. So all the stuff that you're familiar with or comfortable with from .NET, it's all just built in. Yeah, I knew he would have the obligatory Maui, what is it, Maui Essentials now? So Maui Essentials is some of those native APIs being built in. Now they only do the essential work. So nothing background, but anything you need in the foreground. So let's say you want to turn on the flashlight or you want to store some preferences, battery, email. I don't even know how many APIs there are. James has that count. I never remember what the count is. Do you know what the count is off the top of your head?
I don't know what the count is, but yeah, I mean, we kind of, when we originally designed it, tried to find like the top things that people seem to want to do in their app, right? That were just kind of hard and make the basics of them just easier. So like getting GPS location, stuff like that, like every device is different. You could drop down to the platform, like you mentioned, if you wanted to their specific APIs, but nobody wants to have to do that for some of the simpler use cases anyway.
Right. So I think the last count, it was at 70 APIs that are already cross-platform for you. So if you're working with any of the sensors or connectivity, this is a huge one. With mobile apps, if you're doing mobile apps, you really want to know if you're doing anything online, does my device even have internet so I can start making API calls? So that's a big one. There's his animation. Beautiful. The Maui bot on the surfboard. So here's an example of a .NET MAUI call for Maui Essentials. Very easy. This all comes built in. So if you're not comfortable with, say, something like dependency injection, or you have no idea what that is, you can use the static variable. So simply pulling it up. The good thing about .NET 6 is they do something called global using. So you don't even need to know the namespace. For instance, if you type this in your current project right now, you're already going to have geolocation, and you can start making these calls almost right away. There's obviously a few little permission things you have to add if you've done any native development, but for the most part, out of the box, this is just going to work for you. So that's pretty cool, because really there's probably, I want to say, about 20 lines of code just behind getting the last known location from a device, and really it's right there. So you don't have to work very far. And in fact, a lot of times when I'm doing any code like this, I'll take this and I'll scrunch it into what's called an extension method. So it's going to do all this for me. Can't get the last known location. Let's try and get the current one. And you got one line of code. And there's the dependency injection. So dependency injection, again, if you've done ASP.NET development, dependency injection is just part of life. It's great, especially when we start to talk about Mvvm. You can inject all this stuff. And the Mvvm view models really lend themselves to unit testing. We're not going to cover unit testing today, but again, really by just having an interface and injecting it into your view model, this now becomes a very testable / mockable component. So you're able to test your business logic without actually having geolocation work. But the Maui team has really done a good job building all of these interfaces out for us already. So this is just there. You can just start using it with little to no effort. Performance, what are we talking about here? Interesting. All right, so .NET MAUI or .NET 6 is built on a trusted technology. iOS does have full ahead of time compile or AOT compilation. The compilation does produce an ARM binary for Apple's App Store. I don't even know how I'm going to describe that. AOT is quite a bit faster than JIT, if you're familiar with compilation technologies. JIT, again, I got to knock Android, sorry. Android's a very slow platform in terms of raw CPU and stuff, so you really want the AOT compilation. Android does take advantage of JIT just because it's all built on Java really under the hood. And it does have some ahead of time compilation. You can do full AOT on Android now, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, well, see, there's how much I know. But the idea is at the end of the day, you're working with a true native app. So as much as we're talking about C# and cross-platform, at the end of the day, you're getting a native binary and it's fully compiled. It's not like a web language or some sort of interpreted technology going on under the hood. A full app platform. So this is kind of just to close what we're saying. So they're between, for .NET MAUI and the full app platform support, we're starting with 40 type pages, layouts, and controls, all built from C# or XAML. We have two-way data binding, so if you've done any React, WPF development in the past, it's all just out of the box for two-way binding. We have straight navigation services, visual state management. I don't think we're going to cover that, but that's a very good way of managing transitions on your page. Not navigation transitions, just like kind of animations. They have good animation APIs, and I haven't really played with those, to be honest. Dependency as service is more of a carry forward from Xamarin Forms. So that was like, for anybody that is familiar with dependency injection, that was kind of like your service location pattern. There is good messaging center support. So that's if you're using any pub sub in your application. CI/CD support, sure, .NET 6, it just kind of comes built in. Hybrid native development with Blazor. I'm going to talk more about this later. So if you've ever done any Razor kind of MVC, or you're hearing lots about Blazor because Microsoft's really pushing that one hard, there is some hybrid development scenarios where you can do it in web. And very recently now, they've started to even have native Blazor. So if you don't like, say, Mvvm, or you just want to kind of do the Razor way, they do now have an out-of-the-box scenario with Blazor. So we'll talk more about that later. Platform API access, I'm going to show this again later. It's very easy to just say, if it's iOS, run this set of code, else run this code. It's stupid simple. Another thing that Maui has is a way to, if you've done native development, sometimes the biggest hassle is getting all the right-sized images or icons. I know Android adds some new XXX, XXX, huge size fonts every time they release a new device. So the nice thing with Maui is you can dump in, say, an SVG, and it's going to auto size all of those for you. That's actually John's, that's your pet project, I think, that came forward. So that's good because I suck at images personally. If I have to go into an image editor and resize all these things, thank God there's been tools released over the year that take care of that for me, but it sucks. And every single release of iOS or Android, they add another icon that I need to fill. So this does it for you. Put in one SVG and watch it go everywhere. Same with fonts. Fonts are also can sometimes be a painful thing to register on your native platforms. This one is stupid simple. Copy a font into the resource directory, register it, which will show it's already in your default project, and off you go. And then custom and default themes. This is more the light and dark mode. We're going to try and cover that towards the end of this if I can get there. So this is the .NET Podcast app. This is something that Microsoft's really pushing as their good demo. This has the entire, I think, .NET ecosystem built in it. So if you're looking at some of their backend services, stuff like .NET Orleans, if you've ever heard of that, it's fantastic server tech. But this shows everything from Blazor to .NET MAUI and kind of all the reach that Maui has. Like we're looking at desktop. They do have dual screens. Was that released in 6? Was this new?
Good question. I think it might be newer to 7 now. Yep.
So the dual screen support's coming in .NET 7. That's kind of for some of those new devices that are coming out. Those are pretty cool. Expensive devices, but they're pretty cool. Also Mac Catalyst, if you're doing like Mac OS or Windows, for those last people writing Windows apps. Sorry, Windows people. I tend to rip Windows harder than Android. But again, it's a good thing to look up. I'll see if I can find a link during this. But it's a great app showing all of the breadth of .NET, including .NET MAUI. The travel app, this is another good one. Javier, one of the members of the .NET MAUI team, wrote this, I guess. I think he has a whole website where he has all these best practices of UI. So again, we'll see if we can find that, include it with the link for this presentation, because he's got a whole whack of this stuff. This is the weather app. I think this was written by David Ortnow. Did David write this? I think he did.
Yeah, David did, and most of the work, and there's been a
this is another great app showing just kind of some of the capabilities of the animation UI framework. Another great thing to look at. I think this might actually be on the App Store as a demo, so that's something to check out. And again, this is kind of some of the .NET ecosystem. So if you're finding controls missing that doesn't come out of the box from .NET MAUI, these are the guys you want to look at. I have used, well, obviously Telerik. Everybody uses Telerik or Sync Fusion at some point, and I've done some work with some of these like Infragistics. Great to check out if you're missing any components. I think they pretty much do it for every OS, but they do have MAUI offerings as well. So .NET MAUI projects, they're cross-platform, native UI. They have a single project system. So the traditional cross-platform, if you've done any React Native or even Flutter, you generally tend to have an Android project, an iOS project, kind of the cross-platform shared code project. So you end up with a whole bunch of different projects, and then you end up with a whole bunch of different compiles. .NET MAUI took a different approach. So for those who have done any .NET development, there's something called target frameworks. So you're able to say, I want to target iOS, Android, kind of general .NET. So if you want to target the entire breadth of .NET, you can do that just right in one project. And it's going to compile all of your separate native packages based on kind of what your target frameworks are. I'll show that more as we get into the demos and the source code. But again, it's right out of the box for those who have started the test project. You have WinUI, Catalyst, iOS, and Android with the extension for like Tizen. If anybody's doing Tizen development, it all comes out of the box. Again, native compilation, native performance, it's not really something we worry about anymore. Maui runs fast. And you can deploy to multiple devices, mobile and desktop, tablets, etc. And there is the open source URL if you are looking to check the source code out for Maui. It's a relatively massive repo, so have fun going through it. So I was talking earlier about Blazor and kind of what about web developers. So if you've traditionally done web development, as an ASP.NET developer, and I saw this early with Xamarin, a lot of people wanted to jump on board as a web developer and just kind of get in writing mobile apps. I think I even heard it of the audience earlier. It's not quite that easy, unfortunately. We've talked about the complexity of certificates and, the app stores and all the permissions that go with it. That still exists. Maui, React Native, none of them are going to get rid of it for you. However, the UI doesn't have to be mobile based. So for web developers, there is web development with ASP.NET Core. What are we animating here? Which ASP.NET Core can obviously render your JavaScript and your HTML and stuff. But we want to get to Blazor. So Blazor is the hot up and coming kind of web technology, WebAssembly. For anybody that's looked at WebAssembly, that's the hot guy to be in right now. So we want to have code sharing between Blazor and ASP.NET Core. But what about Maui? Hopefully this is coming up. Blazor Web Server. I'm going to skip that because I don't care about any of this. So the idea here is that we want to get the best experience between Blazor and .NET MAUI. So really we want to have as much code share between those two as we possibly can. So what if we put them together? So earlier I was talking about how Blazor can be shared in a web view. They are working on projects. What's that called? The Maui Blazor bindings, native bindings.
Yeah, so there was the mobile Blazor bindings in Xamarin, and that's been updated, and that actually already works today with Maui. So you can write your Razor syntax to actually access the Maui controls APIs, but doing it from the Razor markup.
Right. So you don't even have to work with necessarily the binding technology that we're going to talk with XAML today. You can work right in Razor. You still need to reference the controls. Like if you've ever done any React, it's like you're mixing the JS with the control. It's kind of the same setup. I'm hoping that there is a show in here. I'm not going to bother with that. So reuse existing web development. So again, if you can use Razor and you've done MVC, you can reuse existing web development skills and code. You get access to the entire native platform. It's just you're doing it with Razor. You can actually mix native and web development. So if you're doing any CSS and HTML, the goal is to reduce app development time. Like I said, if you're looking at doing anything with Razor bindings, you're going to be right in the XAML code as opposed to kind of in the web window that they have for Blazor. You can ship it seamlessly to the App Store or an internal distribution. It works the same. So .NET brings rich choices for devs and dev teams, reach versus power. So they've got a nice graph of this. So if you're looking to just do web technologies, like standard web application or even a progressive web application, your reach is going to be through Blazor. If you're looking to get more power in terms of geolocation and Bluetooth and all of those kind of mobile specific APIs, you're going to want to use .NET MAUI. If you want to get a little bit of both, say you want your front-end UI to look to get reuse out of Blazor, but you still want to reach into the cross-platform stuff, you're going to find all of it kind of in the middle with this Blazor hybrid web view control. I'm going to skip this stuff. This is all the marketing stuff. So again, the idea, your platform for building anything. We've got a joiner if anybody wants to open the door. So one platform in .NET, but you're reaching all of the desktop, the web, the cloud, the mobile, gaming, IoT, and AI. So questions, we have any questions online? I know I said interrupt.
No, the only question, it was mostly me. The demos that you shared were available, the source code anywhere?
The source code will be, so on the bottom link, it'll be available after this. I didn't give the source code out because then people can cheat. I don't want them to cheat.
Okay.
In fact, I haven't even done the demo, so I'm going to do it live and hope that no demo god fails me right now. So that's why it's not there. I haven't done it yet.
I was hoping to clone and play around. So
you can clone it out of from James's repo. So the top repo is the Microsoft official one. There is a final finished app in there. They've got, again, the fascination with monkeys. It's there if you want it. Any questions from the audience?
Question about Maui Blazor. Why we have both of them? What's the plan for the future?
So,
Both of them will continue forever or something?
do you want to answer that?
Yeah. I mean, so like, I think the idea right now is we want to meet you where you're comfortable, and in a lot of cases, there's customers that have existing Blazor apps or Blazor components, parts of Blazor apps, and to be able to bring those over to either desktop or to mobile more quickly, that's one option that you have at your disposal. In some ways, some people like to talk about it kind of like an Electron app, where you've got your kind of web technology coming over, but you're still able to access the underlying features of the actual desktop application underneath it. One of the cool things with Blazor is like you can call right into the Essentials APIs that Allan was talking about. So I can do something like get geolocation from the device I'm running on right within my Blazor code. So there's a lot of power of kind of mixing and matching those. And if your skill set is more comfortably in that area, you can kind of start there. One example I kind of like to use of this kind of mixing and matching is, you could envision maybe doing an app where your tab bar, your flyout menu, and various pieces of it were actual native controls within your app using the Maui controls. But maybe the actual content of one of those tabs, you have an existing Blazor component for, and you want to reuse that and put that in the tab. That kind of gives you the ability to mix and match both of those, both in terms of like your own time and value, but then building a really good customer experience still while you're doing that. Yeah, I mean, it's. I think if you go kind of back to that graph that you had up, right, where you've got like the scale of kind of your reach versus power, it's almost a kind of a question of that too. If you have the skill set and you have maybe the existing work, like maybe the Blazor Web View is a good thing to use. But if you're really looking to get like the best performance, the best UI kind of user experience, especially on the mobile platforms, then yeah, you probably want to start with just plain Maui controls.
Also for Windows application, is it better to use Maui or continue with LGPN or with WinUI?
So like Maui is based on WinUI, so we use all of the controls that WinUI provides underneath, and so at the end of it, you get a WinUI real desktop app. The advantage, of course, being if you do it starting from the Maui side of things, you can extend to other platforms more easily because you've already done the work to do it.
I can give an unbiased opinion on it. Have you done anything with WinUI yet? Have you played around with it?
But it has very limited features.
Right. So even from the Xamarin Forms days, if you did any Windows thing, it was built on UWP. And now it's WinUI, and WinUI is, you guys are using 3. So WinUI is kind of in this state of, nobody really quite knows where it is. I mean, they do, but they can't say anything. I would avoid it. I am not a Windows fan anymore. I know I'm here speaking on behalf of Microsoft, so they might get But writing it on Maui, at least I don't have to worry about this debacle between UWP and WinUI and whatever other technology that Windows decides to invent in the meantime. I'm kind of done playing that game with them. So it's a very safe bet to do it. At least you get all the other platforms with it. That's my unbiased, non-Microsoft view on it. Does that answer your question? Okay. John can't say that. I can, though.
You have to see it in practice because in some of these technologies we have a lot that they're going to get rid of WP and use WP.
WPF?
WPF is great, but after that, other features are going to be useless because, for example, you couldn't even use the background task. But Maui for Windows, I haven't used it, so I don't know.
There's so anytime you still need to go, like say a background task, when I hear that, you still need to reach into the platform specific stuff. The good news is from a Windows perspective, between UWP, WinUI, I think it's called Windows RT, sits in between that. So you can still reach that native code and plug it into your Maui app. So if there's something specific there, there are some open source libraries that deal with it. I did in the past, but again, my anger towards the way UWP and WinUI was managed, I try and avoid Windows right now until they set a direction that I can trust on. Let's put it that way. Any other questions that I can answer in the meantime? If not, I am going to start a new project. Now, all we're going to do is spin up a project because we're going to talk about MVVM, which is kind of the broadest topic in how we build the apps. So right now, I'm literally just going to spin up a .NET 6. I'm going to call this, what are we at here? Let's just call it Reactor. And I'm going to clone that, or I'm going to create that. And all this code, any code we do here today, I will put it on one of those 2 links I gave you after. And I am going to do this again in Microsoft Visual Studio for Mac 2022, non-preview. So anybody that's thinking about installing this at home, do not install preview right now or you won't have a good dev experience. So that is what I'm going to do for now. I've created the project. I'm going to go on to our next slide. And I promise this next few slides will be a little bit more entertaining than the marketing stuff. All right, slideshow, play from start, and let's change this to the non-presenter view. So now let's talk about building our first app for .NET MAUI. So we're going to be creating an app called the Monkey Finder. So I'm going to be doing some of this after. The general flow is we're going to have a list of monkeys. So that will be our main page. We're going to have kind of the details on each monkey, I guess. The data we're going to be pulling is some sort of specific to monkeys. Again, the Xamarin guys have this unnatural love for monkeys. I don't know. Maybe because it was named after a monkey. Well, it's Tamarin. Why the X?
Ximian before Xamarin, and then it's always been X with monkey names.
All right, sure. And then you'll see the rest of this is a pretty standard layout for the project. In fact, you should have a vast majority of this, with the exception of these 3 folders, which this is where we're going to add in kind of some of the stuff as we go along. So again, we're looking at one project. You don't see anything here that's specific to Android, iOS, Catalyst, Windows, etc. They all exist under this folder called Platforms. So if you need to get, for instance, access to the main activity, the main application, they will be under there. If you're in the iOS kind of Catalyst world, you'll get access to the app delegate under there. There are some scenarios where you will need to look at that. So say push notifications on iOS, or what specifically do I not have access to on Android? So nothing I can think of off the top of my head. Maybe you've just got some sort of weird setup from say Firebase that you need to put in your main application. You still have access to that. So even though we're in a cross-platform solution, you can still get access to the main native startup code. So here's what I was talking about earlier with in terms of shared resources. We can put in one true type font or as many as we want. We only have to put it there. The build process will put them into their proper places on Android or on iOS. I don't even think I remember where they go anymore, to be honest, because you really get kind of spoiled with this. Same if you're using any SVGs, the built-in build process will automatically size those based on what you're defining them as. So if you're defining it as your launch icon, does it do launch icon? It does do launch icon.
Yeah, it'll do app icons.
So it does.
Those are something you put in the project file yet too, a little bit more information about, but yeah.
So there's still some stuff you have to do. James is doing monkey data. I'm going to pull it from online though. I'm going to pull that from online. So you still have access to raw assets. And then obviously there's your app icons right there. Beautiful. So it will do all of the sizing for you. You don't have to remember the at 2 times, the at 3 times. I think they're even at a 4x now. Are they at a 4x now? I don't remember.
I don't know.
I know that Android has like 5,000 XXX. For the Android developer in the room, what are we at in the DPI section of resources now?
No idea. It's almost automatic also. They generate.
Yeah, Android Studio helps you out with that now, right? But they have a lot. There's like a lot of folders there. I just was like, oh, another one. So again, here's what I was talking about in terms of application. If you need access to the raw startup code, it is there under the platform folder. It's all in C#, so you don't have to know Objective-C or any of that stuff. It's all just there, one language to rule them all. And now, to speak about the multi-targeting, this is in your CS project. So if you edit the actual project file, this is kind of some of the information you'll see. They tend to put kind of the Windows part. You can really only build Windows on Windows. I know that's a shock to some, but this will be taken down one, and it'll say if you're on Windows, then we'll also compile Windows for you. But out of the box, you're pretty much getting all of these. And if you look in your sample project now, like I said, there is room for Tizen. So if you install the Tizen SDK, all the Tizen stuff starts lighting up for you as well. So again, one set of code, one set of markup, all in C#, and you're getting all those platforms for free. So this is what we're going to be looking at. This is our C# project. You'll be able to change the name and all the identifiers. Again, this is stuff that you would normally need to reach into the app manifest on Android or the info plist on iOS and Catalyst. It's just all here. So it makes your life a lot easier. And we're going to be getting permissions there soon too, right?
That's on our backlog. Yeah, it's something we'd like to get in.
We've got a PR for you too. He just keeps pushing stuff out on me. So something that I wanted to show, this is it. We're going to do quite a bit more of this later, but this is an example of how we do kind of some of the easy cross-platform stuff. You can literally specify in your project with compiler flags. If Android, this is how I want a button. This is how I want to new up my button. If it's on iOS, this is how I want a UIKit UI button. Obviously, there's a little more involved, but these come right out of the box. So anywhere you start typing code in your Maui project, you have access to flip between native code without any effort. And this is our Maui Startup. So this is where we're going to create all of our, again, for ASP.NET developers, this is where you will be kind of putting in your services like connectivity, registering your pages, registering your view models, which we're going to get to, and then configuring stuff like your fonts. Because you still have to have a way to call for your font. So in this case, like open sans regular, you still need to be able to specify that in your control to say, use this font. This is the font I want. So you still have to register them so that the platform's aware of them. And then Maui knows, okay, that's what you want. That's where I need to go and get the native registrations of that font. So that all, it's very easy now. This used to have to do this in your delegate and stuff. And now it's just in one place. It's fantastic. And then this is showing off some of the services that we're going to register later. So our monkey service, this is where, this is again getting into kind of the dependency injection stuff that we're talking about. The monkey service is going to pull some sort of foreign data. James Montemagno, the guy who set all this project up, he already has a JSON file. So we're going to go and pull data from there later. We register our view model and we register our page. Now he's registered these all as singletons. Don't do that. I will show you how it's done. The reason we don't register pages as singletons, sorry, James, is because this will pin them in memory indefinitely. And I've seen this far too often. Like a singleton means for the entire state of this application, stay online. Well, if you start navving away from the pages or close these pages, they will stay in memory. So that's not good. So we usually register these as transient. So it means new up an instance. And then when I throw it away, it's gone. There's nothing holding it. So while this says add singleton, add transient, change this. I should have changed it. Except that's an image, I can't change it.
Photoshop skills.
I already said I don't have Photoshop skills. If I have to do Photoshop, I'm in big trouble. Out of the box, we still want to work with a lot of events or app lifecycle stuff. So Maui does come with your typical kind of when your application starts, when it goes to sleep, or kind of going to the background. So you're swiping away the app, or you're pressing a button to make your app go away. And then when we're resuming it. So for instance, if I'm clicking on it, so it's already started, but I'm resuming it, I'm bringing it back to the foreground. These events all come out of the box. However, hopefully this next slide has, beautiful. So there is other Maui app lifecycle. So they've made it a little bit richer. So this is all the cross-platform events. This is what works everywhere. And we'll talk about, this is the Windows lifecycle. So you got the created, the activated, the deactivated. They all map to kind of the general events coming out of the native operating systems. So they're there if you need to take action, like when the user comes back. Maybe they've got some fresh data that needs to be displayed. Maybe you want to do like a little snack bar to say, hey, since you were gone, you've got these 10 new messages as an example. That's stuff you can do on the startup or the resuming of your application. And multi-window, I guess this was built into .NET 6.
Yeah.
I thought this was .NET 7. Oh, multi-window, sorry, this is multi-window, not dual screens or whatever we're calling that. So if you are any type of desktop developer, it's quite often that you want to have multiple windows. What they used to call it, this is an MDI, but it's kind of close. At least you can have the multi-windows now. You got to think more.
It's and works on mobile too, actually. Like if you've got an Android app that has a screen, if it's like I guess the Google devices, the laptops, Chromebooks, you can open new activities. Basically, we've implemented the multiple windows on top of activities. iPad OS and Catalyst are in the same boat too, where you can have different things pop up. And iPads, it's kind of neat because that works into their platform scene API, and you can kind of put screens away and bring them back. And this helps you just do the right thing all across platform.
Very much a desktop-oriented thing, but yeah, it's getting into mobile. I don't know that I would do this on a mobile device, but definitely on a tablet, I guess. So I haven't done this personally. Shell, Shell is Microsoft's, for lack of a better word, I'm going to be unbiased here, attempt to make your general flow of your application better. It does help. It's very good to get you started. So Shell will give you everything about naviging from point A to point B, and you have to do hardly any work to get it. They do everything from saying, this is the icon, this is the title, right? This is how we want it to fly out. This is what we want to put in the navigation stage. This is very good to start with. So, and they've done a good job of it, but it only gets you so far. So my unbiased opinion is definitely start with this, but don't expect it to scale with your solutions. There are some good open cross-platform OSS style libraries that will really do this good. I love the Maui team.
I think Allan needs to give Shell another try in Maui. There has been a lot of work done with Maui to make it a lot more customizable. So you can influence the styling and the layout of things and add your own content to sections of the flyout and stuff. It's come a ways from Xamarin Forms at this point.
Okay.
So
I will try it. I will try it a second time. I do love the Maui team. I love what they do. This is the only one I had a tough time with. And I have worked out in the community for many years now. I've worked with a lot of customers. This, again, I didn't try it in Maui. My bias is coming from Xamarin Forms. It didn't scale well with those teams. Give John, it's straight from the horse's mouth. Give it another try. I'll give it another try. Okay. Pages, single point content page holds one visual element. Let's skip that. We'll get back to it in a second. No, I guess we don't. He's going to go through all these slides. Okay. Concept of pages. Obviously, like I was mentioning earlier, content page is your equivalent of a blank slate. You have to start with a page, and then from there you can put in a single layout. So for instance, it's not really a control. You have to put a layout in first to say how your page, like, so for instance, the stack layout is obviously just going to be stacking one on top of the other. That's where I like to go. Label, entry button. So it's a very good way to dev a UI. So you would start with it with your layout, and then you would lay your controls in within that layout. Oh, there he's got layouts handle child elements. Yes. There we go. That's really what we want. So again, how you lay these out, there's different kinds of layouts, which we'll cover. There's grid, vertical stack layout, horizontal stack layout, and then you can mix and match layouts as you need to. Flex layout, let's get through that. Providing behavior. So obviously the most easy control to use for capturing data in an application is a text box, or in this case, Maui /Xamarin Forms called it entry. Don't ask me why, it's just what it is. Entry is a great way of grabbing, so your keyboard entries, you can stick stuff like a placeholder in it, and you can say, you know what, I only want the keyboard to allow email styled. It's almost like putting a regex. If you ever put a regex on a text box, that's a great way of doing it without knowing regular expressions. I mean, I still remember regular expressions, but a lot of people are like, do I really have to use that stuff? So the answer is no. This is really good at using the platform. It tells the platform, you know, even if you want a numeric, often I use this for numeric input. So, you know, just stop anybody from typing letters in the entry and it's all there. And obviously listening to the event of the text changing, you can do that all right here. Now this is using the event. I'm going to show a better option to do this later with Mvvm, watching the text changed on your entry. But this is out of the box. That's the behavior you're going to get. So explodes visualization, controls explodes events. Great. All right, so we are going to write an app now. So hopefully everybody spun up. Does anybody need a break? I know this, I'm talking a lot up here, but I'm taking a drink. Does anybody want to take a couple-minute break? Because this is 2.5 hours. So if anybody wants a break, now's the time to do it. We'll take, let's say 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Maybe Bruno can set up pauses for a couple minutes before we start the next section. Is anybody running the stream back there? Are they sleeping? Are you sleeping? Yeah, just get 2 minutes for everybody to take a break. I'm live. I think I'm live. I am just going to bring up Visual Studio here. Oh no, we already did that. So we spun up our first app. Let's go ahead and open up the big one. So this is the most important stuff that I want to talk about besides cross-platform stuff. Let's get that going. All right. So after this PowerPoint, I did promise we're going to do some code. After this one, this is where the real code starts beginning, because this is kind of, well, the screens and the layouts and the controls are important and they give us cross-platform. They don't really give us an application. You can do stuff in the page with the events, kind of how I was showing entry before, but don't do that. When I start showing MVVM or model view model, and data binding from your view models, 2 thumbs up. This is the way to go. So when we talk about model view model, we have the view. That's how to display stuff. Very common. You know, want my information, want my collections of data. But the view model is kind of transitioning your data and the events. So for instance, that entry control we were showing earlier, like the text changed, that event would be flowing back here. There's a different way it happens, and I'll show that in a few minutes. That would flow back to your view model, kind of on a bindable property, kind of similar to how you do it in React and other UI frameworks these days. And then what would happen is the data, because we said we have two-way binding, can move to and from that entry control. So let's say your view model doesn't like the data it's getting from the text, you can change it back to something else or say no, or maybe display an error in real time underneath that entry control. One other thing that the view model does is kind of glues kind of your underlying data model, right? So your your services, whether you're getting it from JSON data or some sort of HTTP service or, whatever, Signal or gRPC, that's John's thing lately, right? However you're getting that data, the view model is kind of sitting in between the view and how you get that data, right? So it's kind of like your master controller. It's in the center of everything, and it's quite powerful. So data, what are we doing here? .NET data binding. So here's an example of, we're going to kind of build this in our code anyways, is a base view model. So every single thing in MVVM is all built off of this one single interface. And that single interface is literally nothing but a .NET event. So everything off of this one simple thing. It's kind of really magical when you think about it, because one interface to do all of this and really push information up, that's pretty powerful, if you ask me. So you're sending through the name of the property that changed. So in this case, we'll say text. It's going to tell the UI. The UI is going to be listening to this .NET event, and it's going to say, oh, okay, name or first name or last name, it changed. Let's tell the UI about it. And I think there's a better example right here. So this would be what we see up in our view model. Now, this is a lot of wiring. We're looking at kind of it in a raw view. There is fast ways of doing this without all of this code. But at its glorified nature, we have our base view model plus a property in our actual code. So for instance, like let's say this is a user entry form. We would have something like a private property called first name. We would have a public property. So this is what our UI is seeing and kind of our external data. And we're returning any value, whether it's null or empty or whatever the user's entered is fine. But back here, we're deciding kind of some minimal or first level validation. So for instance, if the first name comes in and it's already equal, so the user has typed in, let's say Allan, and I type in Allan again, it's already Allan. So we don't need to do any action there, right? Why tell the UI to redraw something that hasn't changed? And then lastly, if it has changed, let's set it and tell it has changed. So we can actually be changing this property from our view model, or it can be the user typing in the entry field, the first name, and it's real time coming back here. So as each letter's typed, it's telling our view model that it's changed. So you're able to validate kind of the data coming in real time. And this is how you do it in C#. So if you don't like the XAML, this is a way to do it in C#. Most things in the tooling are built around the XAML, which is what we're going to be showing today. So definitely focus there first before you start going into C#. And that is the equivalent of the binding. But this is the way you do it in XAML. So for instance, here's our binding to first name. So this is just nothing but a basic label, right? So the UI kit's UI label or just the label in Android, that's it. And we're binding this. Now, obviously a label, I can't enter anything. It can only go from my view model to the label. So it's a one-way bound piece of data. But if this was an entry, which let's hope it's in this slide. There we go. So in this case, here's the entry. We put a placeholder in. Maybe you want to put a label above it so that they know. But you can put a placeholder in and say, this is the information that should go into this entry box. But there's how you're binding it. So you're saying, I want to bind this to that property from my view model, and I want it to be two-way. Now, the good thing is about an entry control, this is the default out of the box. So you don't need to actually tell it that. This is just a very explicit way of saying it's two-way data bound. So it's very powerful. As I type, it tells that guy to change. If I want to change the first name in the back end or my view model, the change will appear here. So it's very two-way oriented. So the way that this happens is it's still based off of events. So the UI raises an event, notifies the code about a user activity, whether they clicked in the box, they clicked a button, they selected an item, all of those normal events that we're used to in UI controls. The downside is using events like that. It's not really a view model way of doing it because of the two-way binding, right? So how has he worded this? The downside is these events must be handled in the code behind file. So view models are kind of, think of them as, let's say a siloed, they sit beside your page. They're not part of your page. So you'll have a XAML and then you'll have a C#. So for anybody that's ever done, say, WinForms, you had a page and then it had kind of a code behind or a partial file. You still have that code behind files so you can work with the raw controls, but that's not really how we do it in MVVM. The concept of MVVM and the view model is that you don't ever see any you're working with data. You're not working with the controls or the events of the control. So we've talked about entry and how we bind to, say, something like a string, like a first name, a last name, all that good stuff in the two-way data binding. But there's also things like buttons, and buttons are a way of initializing, like go and do something. I'm expecting it to do something. And then there's a lot of things that come with buttons, like, should I even be able to click it? Can I execute the button? So with what I've got now, can this button actually be run? So the good about that is that there's a couple things that are bound there. So with that, we had the iNotify property change for our view models, but with actions or commands in this case, we have one other interface. And from here, it's got stuff like, can I execute? So the button will be asking that, can I execute? And if it says no, the button's actually disabled. And I'm going to show this. It doesn't do it justice here, but when I show you the code behind this, it's pretty cool. There's not a lot to disable and enable a button, because the button knows to listen to this event and ask this command if it can execute. And then finally, when it's given permission to execute, it's going to call this. Okay. So when you have a command in your view model, you don't have to implement all this stuff. You're literally just saying, here's a command, tell it can execute, tell it when it can't execute. And maybe that's based on your first name changing, your last name changing. So you can actually apply a validation kind of schema here for this button to actually be able to execute. So we have while this shows how to implement iCommand, you're never really going to do it. Every framework out there, Xamarin, Maui, they all come with this out of the box. So this shows you how it works under the hood, or how it should work under the hood, but you don't need to worry about this stuff. It will come built in for you. So I'm going to skip a lot of this stuff because I don't want to focus too much time on that. So again, this is where stuff like buttons apply. Where does a command apply in .NET MAUI? So stuff like buttons, pretty much all of these are buttons at some aspect of it. So if you've got a toolbar item, that's one that sits up in the navigation bar. You can still treat that as a button, because underneath the hood, it's a button. A text cell, that's if you've ever seen kind of the good, in iOS, if you ever see kind of the table views when you're doing settings, like when you go through the preferences screen, you have a lot of stuff like text cells. Those can work as buttons, they can work as entry, they're kind of multifaceted. But at the end of the day, you can still attach a command to it. So this is really where we start to enter in how we do this in our view models. So this is where we would use a command in our view model. So we define it again as a public, an I command, and then we name what the event is. So in this case, give bonus. We don't know what that's going to do. So me as a UI implementer or somebody that's coding kind of the XAML, I don't really care what this does. I think it's going to give a bonus. Maybe it's doing some sort of business logic. Maybe somebody gets a 200% bonus, and that guy we didn't like, doing the Windows stuff, he gets a 1% bonus because he's writing Windows. Sorry, had to make the joke. So from here, we can simply say, look, this button, give bonus. We can enable and disable our command, which I'll show in the code in a minute. And then we're just going to tell it the command that this button executes is the binding of give bonus, which is sitting in our view model. So with very little work, all of a sudden, we've got this bound, but we're not actually referencing UI code in our view model. So we're keeping a really good separation of how that code works. And again, if you've got anything, this is kind of go through gesture-based commands. So if you've got anything like an image, I'm trying to think where else you might use gesture recognizers. Maybe just on the screen, a tap kind of on the screen. You can put what's called a gesture recognizer. So think of something like I got this big image on my screen, or maybe a bunch of little images, and I want to know where they're clicking. You can put what's called a gesture recognizer. Maui comes with one called the tap gesture recognizer built out of the box. You can pass your command again, same as a button. It won't necessarily disable an image because the image doesn't really have concept of a disabled, but you can do stuff like a fade if you want it from your view model. There's other properties you can bind to. And last, you can still pass in a parameter. So maybe you want to have one command, like an add or subtract. but you want to put like a 1 or a -1 in the command properties, you can do that with just passing it here. You don't have to have like a add, subtract, divide. You can really just kind of do 1, -1, -2, etc. If you want. It depends on how you want to implement it. In the vast majority of the cases, this will default, you're passing a string here. So often we run into problems there. We're not going to worry about that today, but it's just something to be aware of, is that the command property goes back as a string. So here's an example of how we're implementing this. So here's an actual view model, newing up the command. So you notice we're not actually implementing our I command. Like I said, we're never going to implement that. Every open source library out there or .NET MAUI comes with this out of the box. So from here, you can see kind of they're wiring up to an event. Again, we've left kind of the code out of there for brevity. We don't need to know how it works. It's going to work. So we're newing up our command for give bonus. We're pointing it at a method in our view model. And we're also looking on can give bonus, right? So we can return true or false whether this command is enabled. And that will enable and disable the button. So again, and you can change this based on any sort of validation you might be doing on parameters entered in entry or any of the other stuff within your view model. And we're going to get, you know what, I think I'm going to cover this when we do, when we actually do the code. The idea here, obviously we want our code to be fast. So I've talked a lot about view models and kind of the page, but I haven't talked about how we glue those two together. Okay, so the concept of the content page, it still needs to know, okay, what's my actual view model? So there's something called a binding context, which I'm going to get to what this is in a minute. So we tell it what our binding context is, whether that's the employee view model or some other view model we've created. We have to tell the binding context of our page how we're gluing those two together. We can get our view model out of dependency injection. We can new it up ourselves. There's many ways to get at it. How you do it, that's up to you. There's some good stuff that comes out of the box, which we'll show in the example. But what the concept here is, what they're trying to explain is, because your XAML doesn't know the view model or the data that you're using, what we want to do is we want to specify the data type. So what view model do we want my IntelliSense to work with? Because once you start specifying this, how we get to this view model, Visual Studio for Mac and Windows, they'll start figuring out what's all pluggable in the properties as you go. So this is kind of, not only is it helping the tooling, it's actually telling the XAML compiler how to build this nice and fast for you. So it doesn't dynamically have to figure this stuff out. It's been told what it's going to be given. So it can do a lot of these optimizations under the hood. So now we're going to do some code. This is where stuff gets good. Let's jump out of this. And I am going to open my Visual Studio. I do have it in dark. Come on, Zoom. Yeah, what is it? I've got the keys different here now. Hang on.
Command Shift Plus.
I shifted up. Command Shift. What's the Windows version on it? Yeah, I've got the Windows keys on it.
Control Plus.
Control Plus. Let's try that.
Command Plus.
Command Plus.
Option Plus.
Option Plus. It's got to be one of those, right?
Probably pinch to zoom on it too.
No, that's not working either.
I have to just go to the view manager.
Yeah, let's bump it up so everybody can see, because I can barely see it, so I'm only imagining.
Control Shift Plus. You have it.
Control Shift. No. It's all right. We'll just keep zooming in until everybody can see it. And one more. Can you guys all see that? Everybody back there can see this? You guys have like 2 TVs, so that's not really fair, right? All right. So I'm going to fix my typos there. And now I'm going to bring in one control because I don't want to have to sit there and type all this out. So let's go ahead. I've got this nice guy sitting in my OneDrive. So I'm going to bring him over into my project. So I'm going to call this, let's actually create a directory, call it view models. I'm going to create a new folder called view models. And I'm going to copy in existing file. Let's go to my, that's not the directory you're in. Let's go to my OneDrive and let's go to my base view model. I'm going to copy that in. All right, so I'm going to show very quickly what we've got going on here. So this is a base view model. So like I said, everything begins and ends with this iNotify property change. So you're going to be using this pretty much in every single view model you have. So I've added a nice couple properties here to help us work with this. So you can take a look really quickly, maybe try and copy it. This is also partially on the other repo I gave you guys if you want to start from that. But this is a good starting point. This kind of gives us a lot of stuff out of the box that we're going to need to work with our view models so that we don't have to write this same set of code over and over and over again in our setters. Because if I have to write that same kind of code, you know, I only have so many keystrokes in my lifetime. I think actually, if anybody knows who Scott Hanselman is, he wrote some sort of app online that says how many keystrokes we've got left in our life. It's kind of a depressing thing. So when I think of that, I'm like, you know, it's kind of true. If I have to sit there and write this same, what do we got, 5 lines of code really there? If I have to write that same 5 lines of code, I'm either going to throw hate towards John's team, which I don't like throwing hate, or I'm going to be depressed because, you know, I'm writing the same code over and over and over again. So this is our base view model. This is what we're going to work everything off of. So James had this love, this pretty much all the Xamarin people have this unnatural love of monkeys. So I'm going to actually pull in 2 more pages. Let's do, what is it called? He was calling it views. And we're going to have a main page. So I'm going to go to new file. I'm going to go to .NET MAUI. This is pretty much the same on Windows. You should see kind of a MAUI content page. And we're going to be doing this in XAML. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new page. And I'm going to go ahead and create one more because we had a main page and I think he had a details page as well. So let's go ahead and do details page. And mine's not loading the XAML, so I'm just going to flush out VS real quick. Save and quit. So again, if you are using VS for Mac, it is preview. So there are some issues with it, especially in the preview. If you're using the preview of a preview, it's really rough. Don't use the preview of a preview. Use the stable stuff. So now we've got our 2 pages that we're going to look at. So we're going to go ahead. Why is this new page? I created main page. Hang on 1 second. Let's create this as main page, not new page. New file. Let's go ahead and create main page. Okay, and I'm going to flush this one more time. Come on, Visual Studio, Reactor. There we go. And now we're going to create our main view model. So we're going to start here. So from here, we've got our view models, we've got system. There's nothing special. We are going to go ahead and bring in our base view model, which I think has already got a namespace. So I'm going to actually change the namespace on my view. Let's copy that. Let's copy that. That's what it is. All right, so now, why isn't this guy being picked up here? Oh, I guess I better copy the right information, right? Here we go. So now we have our base view model. We are going to have probably a list of monkeys. So we're also going to define a class, not that. So I'm going to go ahead and create one more folder. I'm going to call this models. So again, if you've worked in kind of the ASP.NET world of things, you're going to have your models, your DTOs or your view models kind of that goes over the pipe. Might be an aggregate of data, etc. It's pretty much the same thing here because we're actually going to be calling a web service or kind of a place where this JSON file exists. So let's do monkey, and I'm not even sure what's in there yet. So we're going to come back to that. So in our view model, we're going to have a list of monkeys, and it's going to want to merge this file. So we're going to call it monkeys, or let's just call it list for now. We know it's a list of monkeys, and I'm going to give it a private setter. And the reason I'm giving this a private setter is just for, generally speaking, you know, you're not going to have a list of data coming from your UI. You're mostly going to be having like your static, your entry, your button clicks, etc. You're not going to be having a list. So the UI can't change this. So I want to make it very explicitly known. So I'm going to bring in our namespace from that. And now I've got our list here. What don't you like? Let's call this namespace cannot directly contain members or fields with such statements. Okay, fine. Let's call it monkeys then. There we go. I had list of a list. And now we are going to go into our Maui program. So what we saw earlier with kind of the startup of Maui is that all of our fonts, all of our application, all of our startup code is going here. So this would be the equivalent of your program.cs in .NET 6 ASP.NET Core, or if you've done any kind of ASP.NET Core or .NET Core in 3.1, they have a startup file. So this is pretty much the identical equivalent of that, just from a desktop/mobile perspective. So one thing we're going to do here is we're going to register. So we've got this builder. So inside a builder, we've got a whole ton of stuff. We've got configuration, we've got configure essentials, configure fonts, like a whole whack of stuff. Now today we're only going to be focusing on the services because we've looked at fonts. We're not really going to do anything with the fonts, but that's all there if we need it. I'm going to focus and create, I'm going to add a transient of our page. So our main page, I think that's the wrong main page, isn't it? Yeah, we've got that main page. That's fine for now. And then I'm going to add our, what do we call it? Details page. And I'm going to bring out that namespace. And then along with that, I'm going to tell it about our dependency injection of our view models, because we're going to get to that more. And this can match pretty much the state of our page, because the view model is very much locked in with our page. So we're going to go ahead and register that. And then I'm going to register our details view model. Add transient details view model, which I didn't create yet. I'm going to go ahead and create that now. So I'm going to create a new class, details view model. I'm going to inherit our base view model. All right. And what we are going to do now, we've got that. I'll figure out how we're going to end up passing a monkey object to our details view to get a better look at it later. So the idea here is we've got our list of data. We pick on one of those lists. So let's say, you know, I tap on something in the list view. I go to details. I view more data about it. So we get our summary information and our full detailed information. So there we have all of our pages. So we have our pages registered as transients again, because we don't want state to be sticky on them. So we have our details in our main page. We have our two view models that are locked with our pages and how we're going to use them. And now the one last thing is I had mentioned, you know, how do we get our view models glued together with our page? The simplest way out of the box from Maui is to just take our view model. So this is our main page. And I'm going to inject, because now our container from our main Maui program now knows about this view model. So it's going to know how to construct that main view model. So any services we pass to it, any sort of control state we pass to it, it's all going to be remembered or passed to our page. So now I'm going to say my binding context is equal to my injected view model. So I have, as a designer, I have no idea how this page works, or I might know how the page works, but I don't know how the logic in the view model is implemented. I don't know where it's getting data. I don't know what services it's using. But as the implementer or the designer, I don't need to care, because I'm just doing the page. I know what view model I need because I've said my view model is locked with my page. And now I can say, okay, great. I hope the developer knows what he's doing because I'm decoupled from it. But now I'm going to come back to this main page for 1 second. So this is our sample XAML. We're going to get to some more XAML in a few minutes. But we are going to say our data type. So this is to help the compiler out to say, what data do we have in there? So I'm going to say, I want this to be my main view model. Now, XAML needs a little bit of help because there could be 10 different things named view model. So the same way we do namespaces in C# is it's kind of more or less the same, just in an XML kind of namespace. So here I've said, go look under the CLR namespace reactor.viewModels. And then I'm kind of using that as an alias to go and find the class I need. So in this case, I've got view models : main view model. So now it knows what to compile with. So any of the data that we start plugging into the XAML is going to be there for us. So we've got that. Now we are going to cover a lot more about collection view in the next couple PowerPoints. But the collection view I'm going to emerge now just to show kind of where we're going with this app. So the collection view is generally how we display lists of data. It's very powerful. You can do a lot of different renderings with it. But for today, we're just going to do a simple list. We're going to bind to that list of monkeys. So we have an item source. And now what's going to happen is the compiler is going to see, assuming I've done this right. Of course, it's not today. Here's our demo problem. Main view model. What is going on with you? What's that? Yeah, that's a good typo to make, isn't it? That's what happens when you start working with namespace files. So one of the new ways in .NET 6 or C# 10, is it 10, 11? So as you can do this now. So if you've done a lot of Java, this is how I used to do it. You just had one namespace at the top. I've obviously been doing this a lot because I was like, what's going on here? Well, my monkeys is outside of my class. Of course, I'm doing that during a demo where I can't see it. Can I blame the light in my face? Yeah, okay. It's a pretty bad one. But now, IntelliSense now picks up my monkeys. So it knows that we're going to bind to this monkeys. We don't know how it's getting that data. We're going to get to that. And with the collection view, we have kind of a couple things that we're going to cover later. But we have an empty view. So this is when we have no data. And we're going to close that up for now. And you might put something like a label and say, no monkeys found. Okay. And now we are going to put how are we going to render this data? There's obviously a lot more kind of cool stuff we can do with the collection view. But right now we're just going to do a simple item template. And then we're going to give it this data template to say, we're going to bind to some data in here. And for now, just like what we did with our view models, we're going to actually tell it what's in here. What's our data type inside of the item that we're rendering? So I'm going to type in monkey. It's going to be mad again because it's like, what's the monkey? I'm going to get that out of there. I'm going to assume that monkey's going to have a name. So I'm going to do this. It's going to come out of JSON at some point. I don't know what that looks like. We're going to get there. And we're going to go into our main view model. And we've got a list of monkeys. We're going to go into our list page again. And we're just going to register a label. Now it knows we're binding to a monkey. So we're going to say binding. We created that name property. And there we go. So this is a pretty stupid basic thing. I mean, it's not going to look pretty. It's just going to go and render the name of the monkey, wherever this comes from. So if there's some nice data that says some cool names of monkeys, maybe there's images and stuff, we'll expand on this as we go. So the one other thing I want to do now is I want to show No, I don't want to do that. I want to create one other folder. So we saw this earlier in kind of the PowerPoints, is the existence of a service. So let's create a folder called services, and we're going to add, I think I'm just going to call this monkey service because it's nice and easy. And we're going to just get rid of that constructor for now. Now, I don't know how this is going to work right now. Maybe you've got a dev team that's going to come along later and say, you know what, just pull it out of a JSON file for now, which I think is what James has given us. But maybe later you want to make an HTTP call to a service. You want to have some sorting. You want to have some pagination, etc. We don't know, right? So I'm going to have this monkey service. I don't know what to do with it. A lot of developers, they want to automatically start sticking an interface on things. And the reason we might do that is because from a unit testing perspective, it's very easy to mock an interface or pretend what that interface does. In big teams, I generally suggest people do this. So I might have something like a task list of monkey IntelliSense complete. Let's say get monkeys. We're going to make a method called get monkeys. So maybe I'm waiting for this ASP.NET team, and this happens a lot with mobile projects. I think it even probably happens a lot with web teams in general. So people doing React. I might be waiting, a month while that backend team decides how many Docker containers we need to render hello world. I might need to have something come out of a JSON file, or I might need to put a JSON file somewhere online and reference it because that backend team is they're doing the work. We got to wait for them. So by hiding this behind an interface, I can quickly swap implementations. You don't need to jump down this rabbit hole right away, but it's certainly a good idea to be planned for it. So now we're going to go ahead and implement this guy. For now, I'm going to just leave it as dead weight, and we'll come back to it. But I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to register it. So one other thing I'm going to do here is this guy I'm going to register as a singleton. Because it doesn't matter. I only need one HTTP client. If it wants to cache data, obviously I don't want it blowing away the cache every time. So me as the implementer of this monkey service, I know I want it to stay memory resident. Whatever it contains in it, it can be decided by who's ever implementing monkey service. Okay, so I'm registering it by the interface. So I'm registering it by the interface to say this is my alias point or my checkpoint. This is what I'm going to inject. This is the implementation I want you to use. So for now, this could be static data monkey service. Later, it could be HTTP monkey service, whatever you want to call it. You can change it out. But the good thing is that when I put this in my main view model, because this is where I'm going to use it, we're just going to do that.
Allan, what happens if you don't specify the implementation when you're registering it there?
Oh, you wanted to get complicated, did you? Okay. So let's go back to that. So the question was, what happens if I just do this?
No, the other way. Yeah, with the interface.
With the interface? Well, that doesn't work because we're trying to, the interface isn't, it's an interface to do something. It's not an actual implementation of code. There are things called default interfaces. We're not going to cover that today. And no, you can't register a default interface before you ask that question. We actually need to tell it the implementation we want. So that is why I have the iMonkey service and the monkey service. And again, the idea here is that we may need to swap implementations over time based on another team implementing it, or maybe we're changing the way we're doing data service calls. Something that's common for mobile apps is to go from, let's say, an online HTTP only service to maybe a local offline storage, right? So whether you have SQLite or some sort of database on the device, and then you've got some even more backend service loading up that database, it's quite common to swap these out. Maybe you just want to change the implementation internally. You can do that as well. It's up to you really how you want to go about it. So I just tell developers, it doesn't hurt to have these interfaces. Don't go crazy on it. Find a right balance there. But certainly to have that swappability is powerful. So me again, coming up to the view models, I'm in my main view model. I've now injected iMonkey service. I have no idea if it's going out to the internet, nor do I care. It's all there. I'm going to call for data. So now what we're going to do is one more thing. And we're not going to implement this yet. We're going to come to this after. I'm going to do an I command. And hopefully that's going to IntelliSense for me. And we'll do load. We're going to call this load. Okay, we've got our load. So I'm going to say, as soon as I can type this properly, I'm going to say new command. And I'm going to do that. And I'm going to call our service, and what do we call it? Get monkeys. And the cool thing is, if you've done async and await, any .NET devs in here? You guys ever done .NET? You've done .NET? Have you done a lot of async stuff? Okay, so yeah, it definitely helps on your back end, but in mobile perspective, it's like mobile desktop, it's like 100 times more important, because if you're doing this on the main thread, which is where we are now, does anybody remember the time when we had Windows Forms and you click on a button and the whole thing would go to a white screen and you'd be like, what the heck is happening? Well, it would be going out to a network call or a database, and maybe that database is under load. So the app is literally sitting there frozen in time, waiting for data to come back from the database.
So we need more do events in here? Is that what you're saying?
Need more do events?
Yeah. Wasn't that the thing?
More do events? No. What?
VB6 days.
Oh, okay. Well, oh man, come on. I have done VB6, but my memory's fading there. That was like what, 25 years ago. So async and await is important in desktop apps because it will fork over to the thread, and when that thread is finished, whatever it's doing, it will hand back to the main thread. So therefore, you're not locking it up. It will simply pass over our data. So we don't have to worry. And the other thing about mobile, we call this monkeys. The other thing about this, there we go. So we've said this command is async. We want to await for monkeys. There's our data. Great, fantastic. But you know, it still doesn't tell us much. Well, we're not freezing our UI. And by the way, if you freeze UI in Android or iOS and you freeze it for too long, the OS will shut you down with no mercy. iOS doesn't play around with thread locking the main thread very well. Android, I assume, lets it go a lot longer. But eventually it will kill the app and it'll start watching that. iOS gets really smart about it and starts shutting it down a lot sooner. So don't abuse the UI thread. So here we're doing await. So it will go off into the distance, get data. And when it comes back, we will tell the UI to render. So what we're going to do now, though, is while we've rendered that data, we still don't know that anything's happening, right? Okay, so we've gone out. Maybe this get monkeys takes like 30 seconds to run. Maybe it's slow. James wrote a JSON file. Maybe he's got us just because he wants to screw with the demo. Maybe he's got some sort of wait time on it that takes 30 seconds. So he wouldn't do that to me, but you never know. So we want to be able to tell the users, hey, our app is off busy doing something. So let's actually add to our base view model, because this is going to be a common pattern. Let's go ahead and put a public bool is busy. Okay, and then we're going to we have to put our what's called the backing store or our private property. And we're going to do is busy. And then we're going to do a set, and we're going to do set property of reference to the private property. We're going to give it the value. And kind of some of the cool things here is you see that big chunk of code that we had here earlier. This is what it turns out being. Okay, so it's still, we've eliminated having to do those 4 lines over and over just with this. But even these 4 lines of code, we'll call it 4 lines even though it's really 2. There's several toolkits out there that can turn this into 1, right? So you don't even have to do that stuff. You don't even have to have this backing store. There's ones out there called reactive UI. So you simply put this beside your property and automatically it turns in all that code for you. So you don't have to write the boilerplate code for it. The other great one is if you're doing any other development with .NET desktops, they've got one called the Community Toolkit Mvvm. Is that what it is? That's the popular kit on the block right now. It also has this way of doing code generation. So when you build it, you mark the one property with, I think it's property.
Observable
property. And it will do all of that code for you. So this looks very obtuse or a lot to write. There are better ways to do it. There's stuff out there that helps you. So don't think that, oh my God, do I have to go and write this for everything? For this demo, yes. But certainly there's some better ways to do it out there. So don't feel that you're held to doing all this boilerplate. So now we've got this as busy. So let's go back to our main view model. And what we're going to do is this dot is busy. And we're going to say it's true. And then when we're done, we're going to say is busy false. Okay, and we're going to do one other control. And we're going to wrap our collection view in what's called a refresh view. And what the refresh view is, and the most general term for it is, does anybody remember the pull to refresh? You ever done your phone, taken it, pulled it down, it does that little, the nice little spinny thing, and then it really lets you know that something's happening, and it's refreshing data. So from here, we're going to say, okay, is it busy? So we're going to say, is it refreshing? And we've got our is busy property, which is now going to be lit up there, as you can see in the IntelliSense. So now that's going to tell, it's going to tell this UI when is busy is true. It's going to show that nice little loading thing at the top that we've pulled down. And when we're done loading data, it's going to put it away just by setting true or false. So we've got that. And let me just make sure I'm not missing anything else. We've got our is busy. And then we also have to tell it what command are we executing on refreshing. So we're going to have the binding, and we're going to have, I think I called it load. There it is. So when I pull down, it's going to run my load command. I'm going to set is busy to true. I'm going to load monkeys from my monkey service, wherever it is. I'm going to assumably have data come back. If I have no data come back, it's going to say, sorry, there's no monkeys available or found. And if I do, we should have a binding for all of these monkeys. So name, etc. Whatever data we start to present. I'm going to look for the JSON file, and we're going to start figuring out what our model looks like. But that, in a very simplistic thing, is our data. That's our data. That's our collection. It's a very relative good starting point for what we're going to do with this monkey app. Now, I think I'm going to look one more time. James had a nice little, oh, that's our view. Hang on. I think he had a nice little UI already kind of assembled for what he wants to show. He did not. Okay, so we're going to come back to that. I'm going to take one more short little break. This one's going to be shorter than the last one, so just take a bathroom break, grab a drink. This will be the last break, and then we're going to finish kind of the rest of this app and go through just a couple more slides, and then we're probably going to wrap up for the night because it is getting close to 8:30. So go take a 2-minute, come back, and we will finish off the code that we've got. Pretty much all the platforms and the lowest common denominator. So from an Android perspective, it's API 21, which I believe is the Android
6. It's pretty old. Like it goes back quite a ways to the point where I think it's like 2% of devices aren't there yet. And yeah, so collection view goes down into like recycler view on Android and into the UI collection view, I believe, is what we're using on Mac and iOS and Mac Catalyst, and then Windows has its own thing. So it try to optimize for the best control and virtualization and everything on each platform as well.
But if your goal is the lowest common denominator, yeah, there is a cutoff. There, it's kind of flicking. Am I good? No, it's good. It's on now. I thought it was on. It wasn't on. Sorry. Oh, did anybody hear what was going on?
I'll
Or
recap in the chat.
okay. So yeah, if you're looking to hit those lowest common denominators, that's the cutoff point. And like I said, iOS -2, so that would be 15, 14, 13. 16 support's not there. It is coming. I won't put John on the spot for when, because a lot of people are waiting for it. But in all honesty, the only gateway problem there is eventually Apple's going to chop it, so you have to compile against Xcode 14. So that's still several months out. So just like if you're doing Android right now, the cutoff date to be Android 12 compiled is next November. There, if you don't compile with Android 12, you're not getting on the store. So they have those rules to keep pushing the point forward. Does that, in the long way, answer your question? All right. So during that break, I went and copied some nice code from our good friend James. He has a nice JSON file hosted on his website. He didn't put it in his GitHub. So I'm actually going to steal this code. This is what's good because, like I said, you're going to have separation of teams as you go across doing any of this development. So you're going to have maybe people that are working on your offline or your SQLite database, deciding how this works. I don't even want to know. So my job as a front-end developer is definitely going to be the XAML and the way that the list view works, but it's also going to be how these view models work. So me as the guy gluing the view to the service, I still don't need to care how the service works. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to see what this URL takes us to. And we're going to take a look at the data that we get from this JSON file. So we're going to go ahead here and we're going to look. All right. So here is some of our properties that James has shared with us. So I'm going to take that. So that JSON, for those that have used kind of the popular Newtonsoft.json, we're really just going to represent this model in this class. So we've got name. So I guess that one, right? We've got location. So let's just bind that up too. We've got an image. So let's just start with that. You know what? We'll just go from there. So image looks like a nice URL. Oh, we've got details. That's probably a good one too. So let's just take those 4 properties. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to go back to our monkey service, which we have defined as a singleton. And I'm going to take, first of all, I'm going to do in our constructor, I'm going to do a read-only HTTP client. And I'm going to new that up. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to call for our data. James has given us this URL. He has gifted us a nice URL here. I am going to say, I'm going to take that guy and I am going to plop him in here. This is obviously not the best way to do it, but it is a very fast and effective way to do it. So we're going to get monkeys, and we're going to store that to what's called a response. So this is giving us, oh, and I got to make that async. So this comes back to our async. This is really, anytime you make an HTTP call on the web, it's the same thing. It goes out and makes an async request. No different here. We're just going out to the web. And I am going to now translate that into a raw C# object. So we're going to go response.content. Read from JSON async, and I say I want a list of monkeys. So now we have our, as soon as I get rid of that, I have our list of monkeys, and that's also async. So you know what? I'm going to store that too. And we're going to return the monkeys. So that's beautiful. It's not quite the same as James had. He is showing examples. If we had gotten through this whole presentation, the whole workshop, there's cases where we might want to inject a connectivity service. If we're connected, go out to the internet. If we're local, maybe pull from a local JSON cache or whatever that may be. So he's kind of got some of the code here to show how that works or how that you might want that to work in an offline mode. But generally speaking, when you go to offline, you're probably going to be working with a SQLite database of some sort. So now we actually have a service that's going to return an image. So I'm going to go in here now, and I'm going to call this now, let's just do a vertical stack layout. So I want it to stack on top of each other, because we're just going to do a nice and ugly rendering. And we're going to say image, source. The binding is to that image property that we had in our monkey object. And I'm also going to do the text of, let's just say the details for now. So there we go. We've got a relatively, maybe it's a horrible looking list right now. We've got our binding to an image, and we've got an image source. So those images right now, because I'm not constraining the size, one could come out huge, one could come out really small. We don't know until we start seeing the data. For now, I just want to render this raw and see what we're up against. So one thing I'm going to do is I've moved my main page underneath here. We've got app shell, so I need to just tell our app shell, delete this main page. So basically what I want to do is I just want to get rid of the default main page because I ended up creating another one. So that's going to make my app shell kind of angry with me. So local is now reactor.views. There we go. And I am binding that to my main view model. Let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. So I'm actually going to run this on my Mac. So this is one of the cool things. If you compile iOS, there's something called Mac Catalyst. That's really how Maui does its releases of to Mac OS. So it's a very good way of, and it's the dev loop on it is incredibly fast. So when I press start on this, the first time compile always takes a second, but after that, it's just absolute turbo speed to the desktop and running. Unless I've done something weird.
Will it build?
It's never taken that long before. It's not angry about anything. It is building. It's not erroring. Yeah, I get that. Let's just try it again. Yeah, let's just start again. See what's going on. Reactor. All right, my Mac. Start this guy up. Go. This has never broken on me before. I am absolutely jinxed when it comes to tooling, let me tell you. All right, let's try to an iOS emulator. For some reason, it doesn't want to build the Catalyst right now. I guess I didn't fire one off to the demo gods, but I have never had that issue. It doesn't even want to clean my debug right now.
Go from the command line.
I'm going to hand that one off to you there, buddy, at that point.
Sure.
Okay, I think I know what's going on. So what we're going to do, this is just some of the things that happens, because this is a preview tooling. I am going to take Android out of the equation for now, and I am just going to focus on building. And a lot of the times as we start to develop on these platforms, one thing Maui does is it's compiling for Android, iOS, Catalyst, pretty much every time. So you got to wait for all 4 or 5 compiles to happen. So it's not really ideal. It does tend to slow this down. So you can take a simple compile out of the equation, save it. So I've taken Android out because I'm really just building for, yeah, now it's really being stupid. Hang on. Let's take that out and we'll open this up. I'm going to open up Reactor. So now I'm just building for iOS and Catalyst. So let's hope that takes care of whatever problem it's seeing. There we go. That's better. There we go. So we got no monkeys found. So why do we have no monkeys found? Let's see. Because we haven't run the command. So let's go ahead. So basically what happened here is we haven't run any logic. We haven't actually told it to go out and bind. So we're going to add a button. So we're going to put a vertical stack layout here. Actually, you know what we do have? I lie. We have a pull to refresh. We have a pull to refresh in here. Hopefully I can grab it, but I don't think I can. Okay, so let's go ahead and open this in an emulator. Let's open up iOS 13. We'll give the emulator a second to load. Hopefully this builds the second time around, and then I can do a pull to refresh. There we go. So nice and fast. It's getting up and going. Don't know what happened with our previous build, but like I said, there's always something jinxing you. Knock on wood that this is going to run in nice and fast too, because it's not. Interesting.
Give it a second. You might be unalerted and some startup debugger connecting.
It's waiting on the simulator right now.
Give it a second then.
All right, we'll give it a second. Normally it goes nice and fast. The tooling is jinxing me right now. There we go. All right, there's our app. Beautiful. So now let's see if we've got that drop to. There we go. It's running, but it's still not finding monkeys. So let's go. Did we not connect it? I think we did. Let's see. We've got our main view model. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, and I'm going to do this, because now the debugging experience is going to work. So I'm going to pull that down. Pull that down. Yeah, we didn't connect it. For some reason, it's not loading load. So let's see. We've got our main view model.
Did you bind the command?
Yeah, got load. Load is there. So we've got that. So it's not hitting our view model. Let's see why. Let's go ahead and debug this. So I'm going to make sure it's actually hitting this view model. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. We'll debug it one more time. Bring it up. There we go. So it is hitting this view model. Interesting enough. It's creating this view model. Load. It's loading it up. And now I'm going to do the pull to refresh. And it should hit the interior of that, but it's not hitting the interior. This tooling is being very difficult with me today.
Yeah. We just said that it's busy. They refresh.
We did hit, so we've set is busy.
Is the service fully filled out?
Ah, I'll bet you it's throwing an exception. No, it's filled out. We've got the train.
But in the actual implementation of the service?
And it should be now. Yeah,
Okay.
I've got that. Let's see if we're hitting that. Debugging hot bits. So we've got load. Now I'm going to do our pull to refresh and see what's going on here. I got to pull it right down. Here, load that thing, man. We have something sticky going on, and I'm not sure what. Let's see what we've got going on here. So we've got the main view model. We are hitting load. We are setting the busy. So it is setting the busy flag. We're loading those out of a service. I do have access to this JSON file, but for some reason, it is not hitting that view model or that command. It's almost like it's hitting a past version of it. So we're going to clean. We do know it's hitting this view model, and we do know it's calling load. We just don't know why it's not hitting it. Okay, so there it's loading up our command, or it's setting it. See, it's like the debugger doesn't see those values. I'm just seeing if we're getting a warning about anything. I don't see any problems. Let's try and pull it down. It doesn't want to hit it. There we go. Oh, we hit it now. Let's see if we got monkeys that time. Did I just not pull it down far enough? So I still don't have monkeys. Why don't I have monkeys? So we're hitting me as busy. I'm going out to a response. Let's debug this all the way through. Figure out if I've done something wrong. So I have a count of 13 monkeys. I know what it is. So what we've done, this is a new mistake. So I have the monkeys here. So it wasn't making the call, but now it is making the call. The problem is that I haven't told the UI that something's actually changed. So right now I'm just setting magic data on it. So I'm used to having this automatically done for me because, like I said, I use certain tools that are going to generate all that code for me. In this case, I haven't done that. So I'm showing signs of my noobness. So we're going to actually tell it, hey, this property changed, and I'm going to say it is the monkeys list. So now what I'm telling, oh, and I got to do name of. So I got to do name of the monkeys. So what this is going to do is tell the UI, indeed, my monkeys has changed. We'll still leave the debug in there because now we know we're getting data. The failure wasn't the data, it was the problem between the keyboard and the chair. Now the question is how far, there we go. I got to pull it way down. Okay, so we have monkeys. We have a count of 13 monkeys coming back. I have this time told the UI, refresh the data until busy is done. So now we have a lot of data. There we go. Looks like junk, but there we have our list rendering. Very quick. Once I got past that stupid error I was making, now we're binding this data from a service to our collection view with our images, all bound from online source. In a nutshell, that's the very basic app that we can do, and we can start to clean this up as time goes on. Now we are hitting the 8:30, so I think we're going to probably have to have a part 2 of this because we are being kicked out of here shortly. So I'm going to end there tonight. This code will be online for what we're doing. Today, I will put it on the second link. And if you are looking for the full app that's gone through the full workshop, it is on the first link I gave you, which will be part of the live stream recording for this thing. So if you're looking online or at this video offline, you'll be able to find those links there after today. So with that, I am going to have to stop there, but I am going to take any questions for the last 5 minutes we have, whether it's online. Maybe any of you guys in here want to ask any questions about what's gone on or what we're working with. And there's a lot of stuff I couldn't get to because we just didn't have the time. So if there's anything you want to ask that we might have come up to tonight, feel free. So I'll leave the floor. We'll open it up to online. John is here. You can kind of put him on the spot. Let's just try and avoid roadmap stuff. If he had a few more beers in him, he does give up details, but he doesn't like giving up details because he gets in trouble for that. So is there any questions online we can answer, or is it pretty quiet at this point?
Nothing right now online.
You guys have any questions? Yeah.
In this Tizen, can we create apps for Samsung TVs? Or is only
Yes.
Yeah, so Samsung actually does most of the work to contribute the code for their Tizen implementation for Maui. So yeah, they you can go build a Tizen app, run it on your TV, your refrigerator, I don't think many Tizen
TVs.
phones are out here.
TVs.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said TVs.
Yeah, TVs, fridges,
Yeah, they do have fridges.
Raspberry Pis. Yeah.
And Tizen really, the Tizen team really treats Maui as like its first-class citizen. I think all their advertising for how you work with Tizen is pretty much devoted towards Maui because they were in Maui from like day one. Like the previews and stuff, they had implementations ready to go.
So online question, will Maui support tab page in Maui Shell apps in the future? It is supported in Xamarin Forms Shell, but not Maui Shell.
That's all you.
Yeah, no, I believe if we had more time to get into more of the demos and code, You can definitely do tabs in Shell today. You can do both, kind of the top level like tab bar style, but you can also nest them in flyout items too. So you could have a number of tab items in a flyout section, and that would show up as, so if you had a flyout page, but you wanted that to include tabs, but only when you're on that part of the selected flyout, that all works. I was playing with that earlier just to make sure I wasn't, telling any lies when we were going through the app, any Shell stuff. So yeah, should be supported. If there's something that specifically, you're still finding is not supported there, I mean, best is to open an issue in the Maui repo, and we'll go from there.
Anything else? Anything else online? If not,
there's some questions about calling APIs in a child component of a Razor component. That's getting pretty into the technical details. I don't think we can do much answering that super quickly right now. But yeah, you can. That'd be a good question for the ASP.NET team. Definitely, they do most of the contributions to the Maui repo in terms of the Maui Blazor web view.
Cool. Yep.
Each version, for example, Android, you are adding new features, but now we are saying that we are only supporting from Android API 21 until later. It means that we are not supporting any new features in new Android.
So yeah, so the question was around us. Android added new features. We talked about supporting back to API 21. So that's just the minimum version that Maui supports. So Maui is built on top of, we used to call it Xamarin Android and Xamarin iOS. Well, really it's just .NET Android and .NET iOS, which means, like Allan mentioned before, you can still get down to the platform APIs on Android and iOS. You can get down to them with C#, which is kind of neat. So there's an Android team and an iOS team, and they maintain the bindings and the glue to expose all of those platform APIs through C#. So whenever a new version comes out, so like iOS 16, we're working hard at supporting now. I think we're very close to launching that. When that comes out, you'll be able to use the APIs that exist there, and the same thing for Android. So Android, I think 33, we already have support shipping for. API 33, whatever version that.
I can't keep track.
Yeah, you need to pull up the table of this is the API level, this is the version number that it goes with, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I think 33 is the latest, right, of Android. So yeah, we've got support for that today, so you can get at that already.
And blame Apple for why iOS 16 isn't out yet, because Apple likes to change the way things work with at least with Xcode. iOS they're pretty good with, but Xcode they are not. Xcode always, even as a native developer for Apple, I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of the Fluent stuff I had was broken with this release. I know a lot of people were freaking out about it, so it's just part of the game. So it's like every time IE6 and then IE7 and IE8 came out, it's the same break. You ended up with rendering defects because of it. So that's why we're engineers. We got to keep up with the times.
Yeah, I don't see anything else online, so
all right.
I think we're good.
Well, thanks everybody for coming out. Thanks everybody online. Be on the lookout. We'll probably have a part 2 of this and get through the rest of it. And like I said, you'll find all the links online for this afterwards. Yeah. So with that,
thanks, Allan, for running through all that.
Yeah, thanks, John, for coming. It was awesome. Do you guys want to say any closing bits for Reactor?
I'm going to say also thanks to the one online. You made me install a couple of tools that I think I don't going to need in the future, but I'm going to have some fun. It was super cool. And thanks for helping moderating the online one. So, thanks for coming.
Thank you. I'm going to have some now. So.
It's a lot of